Welcome to Crossword Compiler 11. In this video I'm going to give you a quick tour of some of the great new features we've got in this version. So the first thing is Grid Insight, which is a way of analysing the grid as you edit it, completely automatically. And that's this button on the toolbar here. So if I turn on Grid Insight, it will automatically analyse the grid as you do things in it. So it can check for duplicate words. If you've got the Pro Grid filler, it'll check for duplicate substrings. You can also check against the spelling list if you want to. And more interestingly, it can also check the fillability. So identify word slots which are difficult to fill or impossible to fill in conjunction with other nearby words. So in this grid here, you can see that it's highlighted these two slots here. If I put the cursor on the word slot down here, it tells you what it's highlighting, no matches found. So these are two slots where there are no words that would fit. Down here, you can see it's highlighted a just slightly different color. And here it's saying duplicate substrings. This is just warning you that there's a sequence of 4 letters here. Ends also appears down here. So that's probably not too much of a problem. And you can change the minimum length if you want to. If there are forced letters, it'll put them in. So here you can see it's put in AC as being 2 letters you're going to be forced to use using the default word list if you fill in this corner. In addition to showing fully localized problems like here where there is no words that will fit, this color of this button will actually also show you the total fillability of the area. So here the button is red, telling you that this area is not fillable. So here that's kind of obvious because there are 2 slots which are not fillable, so the whole thing must be non-fillable. If I go into this corner, put the cursor in the corner, now the button changes to green, telling me that this area of the grid is fine. There are words that will fill the entire corner. If I go back into this corner over here, there's no obvious immediate failure on a single word, but nonetheless it's impossible to fill in combination all this area, so the button has turned to red. So let's try and back out some of these words to make this something that could be fillable. Shift plus delete to delete that one. It's still saying red, so we can't do that. So I can keep going. So now the button is showing green and all this area is connected. So that's telling us that now it's possible to fill this area with the default word list. But let's say I don't want to fill the whole thing at once. Perhaps I want to focus more on this word. We'll go across here. If I hold down the control and move the mouse, I can select some of the intersecting squares. Let's focus on this corner at the top. In version 11, you can now fill the selected area. Just select Auto Fill, and it will fill just the area that you selected. And of course, you can navigate with these new buttons to see some different fills here as you go along. If you have the Pro Grid filler, there's also a handy feature here called non-stop filling, where you can check for the best scoring fills. So if I select 10 best scoring fills, it will do a continuous search until it's found 10 good fills. Here, you've got a mean score of 50. That's the maximum score that's possible, so it's stopped. And now I can see which of these high scoring fills I want to use for this selection of the grid. Or of course, I could start again and maybe select things more manually. So the manual word selection feature of the Pro Grid filler has been dramatically improved in this version. So we can now access this from the drop-down menu there. And you can see that here it has filled in quite a large section of the area for us based on this particular choice of word, broth here. If I go down here, it will analyze and fill larger areas. And the arrows here are all green. That's indicating that a fill is possible with every single one of these words. So I'm guaranteed they're not to go into a dead end if I select any letter any word which has a green tick. Some of the words have very few forced choices. Some of them have lots of forced word choices, as shown here. So what's happening here is in the background, the program is searching all the possible letters that would fit around with each of these words in turn, doing them all in parallel. And if you wait a little bit longer, it'll search deeper and deeper. So here the search is fairly quick because it's just a corner of the grid. But if you had a very large, open, complex grid, it might take a little while. But gradually it would tell you more and more information about what words are possible in each individual slot. And if there's a dead end, it determines that a word is not fillable. It will just remove it from the list, so you don't waste time filling words that then later on are going to get stuck. If you want to add a note about a particular word, you can now, if you want to, select Use with Clue Citation, and that will open a clue editor and allow you to write some explanation or even a clue for that particular word as you use it as you go along. Or, of course, if you've got a clue database, you can use Show Clues and add a clue from a database as before. So another new feature in version 11 is that you can now fill around and auto-find when you have multi-letter squares. So here, let's say I want to have the letters cat in this square here. I can now fill around this, and it should automatically notice that cat is in one letter and therefore find a word where that's treated as in both directions consistency. So here I've got placated and concatenations, and it's filled it in for us. If you have the Pro Grid Filler, you can go to Fill Grid, and these settings are set on the special menu here. So here it's identified that cat is already in the grid, so it's added cat as a rebus word, the number of letters that can go in one square. But you could add other ones, and there's also support for various letter word substitutions if you want to get fancy. In addition to that, you can, if you wish, also now change the scores for word slots based on their length. So I could set a specific length range and give a separate scores, or a separate score for the longest word in the grid, and customize that as I like to make sure I get the best automatic fill that's possible. For the moment, I'm just going to do a standard manual fill of this grid. So perhaps I'm going to check this word going across here first. So I've actually only got two different possibilities here. And now you can see there's a mixture of green and red, but gradually the red are changing to green as it works out in the background which of these words are fillable. If it finds out that bitterly is not actually possible after all, it will remove it from the list, so you don't waste time filling something that's not fillable. So I'm using a fairly powerful computer here. It's only a laptop, but it is quite a high spec one. So it's doing these things pretty quickly. And you can see that unlike in previous versions, you almost never end up in dead ends in these up to moderately complicated grids. It's found validated solutions for all of them. There are also improvements to the vocabulary puzzle builder in that it'll now remember words that you've used so that you can not use them again in future. So if I choose the astronomy word list here and build a puzzle and accept it, and I now build another puzzle. Let's say I'll do a slightly bigger one this time, but I don't want to reuse the words that I used before. I can go to Action, Remove Words from Last Fills, and it will leave me only the words I haven't used before. In this version, this now works per word list. So there's a memory of which words have been used in the astronomy list, which in other lists. And of course, you can make your own custom list and save it, and then it will remember which words that you've used. And that will also work between sessions, so you can close the program and come back later. If you want to restart it, then you can clear the reset used words. Support for clues in squares puzzles has also been significantly improved with a new layout engine to nicely lay out squares and space around however tight the text is. There's also a variety of new spacing and formatting options. So for example, here, instead of having 5 lines per square, there's now a new half-line setting, which allows you to have thinner spacing and fit slightly larger text into the same square to make things slightly more readable if you want to use that kind of size. There's also support for diagonal arrows. So I go to this puzzle here. For example, in this square here, I can now add a clue for this word here by adding a diagonal arrow to this square. So I go to this plus button in the corner here. There's now a list of diagonal arrows that I can choose So here maybe I'll add an arrow for familial, add, and it puts in the diagonal arrow. And I could then go and write the clue for it. A whole collection of new features have been added to make managing word lists more powerful and easier. In the word list manager, you can now edit scores directly. You just click on the score and adjust as you like. You can also now add and remove words from multiple word lists at once. So if I've got a nice new word that I want to add, perhaps air fryer, I can now add to not only the default list I've selected here, but also any other lists that I might want to add it to as well. So I'm going to use that for teaching English as well, maybe add it to basic English. For the words in the puzzle, there's a new window, View, Edit Words and Scores. This allows you to see the scores of all the words in the puzzle in any of the selected word lists. So here, this shows the scores in the default word list, but I could select any other list and it will show me the scores in that list instead. If I want to edit it, I can just edit the score here. So here it highlights on the right which lists the word is in, and I can either edit just the selected list, or I can edit all of the lists, or I can edit all the lists which have the word with the same score. It's now also easier to change scores and delete words when you're filling. So if I fill this grid, here words used has opened because I've selected this always show used words option. And then I can survey the words that have been used, and if I want to, I can edit the score. So I think albs, not so great. Maybe I want to change that. I can just edit it in place. If there's some word that I don't like, not sure about that, I can delete the word directly just by pressing delete as usual, but I can also do delete word from and select whichever word lists I like. So I could delete it from all of the lists if it's a word that's really terrible and I will just get to abolish it. So that's it for this quick overview. There's lots more cool features and things to play with. I hope you'd like to give it a go yourself.